Welcome to the show, everybody. Thanks for being here on a great Friday afternoon, maybe Friday morning for you guys out on the West Coast. If you can hear me a little better today, got a little microphone here. We had some people saying, hey, you need to get a better microphone. And true enough, my desk is over here. I'm standing, I'm walking around talking to you guys. So needed a better mic that's not as far away. Hopefully you guys love the audio quality. As I say before, feel free to share any feedback on the show. We want to make this product better. You guys have been echoing the sentiments that we've had in internal meetings. This show is getting better and better every single episode that we're doing it. I'm doing a little bit better job of hosting, though I can improve still. And we've got some great guests lined up for you as well. And really excited to talk about these bets for this upcoming weekend. Because as you know, if you were here on Tuesday, you know that we've been crushing it on this Friday show. I think Ryan went 2-0-1. Pam went 3-1. I went 2-0 on last Friday's show with the bets that we were giving out. And we've got a full slate of bets that we're going to be diving into as well soon. I've got a special promo for you that we're going to be getting into here momentarily. And for all of you guys, Jason, thanks for being here. Tyler, thanks for being here. David, loved the show. David loves the audio. Or you said it sounds fine. We could get a little bit more enthusiastic, David, if you want to. I'm okay if you want to be a little bit more enthusiastic about that. Rich is crushing it as well, Tom. Thank you for that. Drop a like. Yes, Hayden, thank you. We're not professional enough over here yet. Like this, like the video over on YouTube, and please feel free to share it. Subscribe so that you can set your alarms as well. All these people that are commenting here that I'm reading their information off, and we're going to be getting to all your questions as well throughout the show. This is how you could do it over at YouTube. You got to go watch us live on YouTube where you can interact. Sharp Football Analysis, that's what you search for over on YouTube. And you can participate in the show, chime in with comments, etc. Sean, the audio is crushing it. I appreciate that. All right, guys. One topic that I want to get into here quickly before we look forward is I got to look back last night real quick at this game, the way that this game played out between the Atlanta Falcons winning the game late over the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I've had some people, you follow me on Twitter probably, and I've had some people that were suggesting that, oh, you're so upset about the way that this thing ended. You must have lost money on Tampa Bay. Actually, I didn't. Actually, if you're subscribing for this week, and you can do so for only $5. You get all the bets this entire weekend for only $5. So I'll give you information on that in a moment. But a lot of you probably signed up for that promo and are on board. You know that we teased the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I didn't care who won the game in overtime. And in fact, I'm probably going to lose this bet. It's a futures bet. I bet the Tampa Bay Buccaneers not to make the playoffs. So I actually don't mind that the Atlanta Falcons came from behind and won this game. It helps my bet out immensely the more games that Tampa Bay loses. That being said, I want you to roll the tape, Matt, on what happened here at the ending of this game with the missed face mask because this was monumental in this game. And what I want you to focus on when Matt rolls this, I'm going to talk over the audio, but we're going to hear the broadcasters talking. I want you to pay attention to two things. Number one, where the ball was spotted as they take the snap for the play that was run, which had a penalty, where the ball was then moved to and is spotted at the end of the video where Tampa Bay takes their very next snap. And in the middle, I want you to pay close attention to how this call worked out real time. And note that there was no after the fact delay by the announcers going back, hey, 3 plays ago, wasn't there a face mask that they could have called? This was not something that was overlooked. In the moment, everybody saw it. Us on TV, the announcers in the booth, before they even actually announced the penalty, and before the next snap for sure, this was clear and obvious that there was something amiss here that they just overlooked. So go ahead and roll it, Matt.
Give it to him. Secures it this time. A flag is down. Going to stop the clock.
You hear somebody say face mask?
Here.
Al says face mask.
Nope.
Offense number 62.
Nope.
10-yard penalty. Repeat second down.
It's the center, Barton. Did they miss a face mask here? Let's take a peek.
Yeah, it sure looks like it.
Yeah.
The Barton was definitely at holes, so it'd be an offsetting 62 on Grady Jarrett. Straps onto the jersey as he cuts back.
Instead, he got a 2nd and 23 back at the 41-yard line. 1:33 on the clock.
All right. So that's where we'll end this one. And Matt, why don't you now pull up the next still shot of the two plays here. Okay. So on the top of the screen, you can see 2nd and 13. That's the snap where the penalty was called. Holding on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers center, but not called on the face mask. And you can see then the result of that penalty, which was the 2nd and 23 on the bottom shot, where they were pushed back to the 41.5, almost 42-yard line. Now, the reason this is obviously massive is because at the top picture, if you don't get first down on 2nd and long, you could easily kick a field goal and force the Falcons to score a touchdown to beat you. In the bottom shot, you can't do that. You're not going to be attempting a field goal where you're spotting the ball close to midfield in case you miss and the other team is now down only 3 points. You're obviously punting and pinning and hoping that your defense can step up. So Ian had the great comment, shouldn't the league office chime in and let the refs know they missed a call? Yes, absolutely they should. Now, conversely, if they're not going to do that, and we certainly have seen them do that in the past, but it's rare that I've seen, and we're going to ask our ref expert later, it's rare that I've seen them actually throw a flag after the fact. I don't think I've ever seen that. But why can't you challenge it? We need to enact that. If the refs are going to miss things like this, that are clear and obvious, that everybody can see it. The announcer saw it. There's guys on the field that were yelling face mask. You heard in the audio in the background. You heard Al talk about it. Well before the next ball is snapped, it was obvious that there was a face mask there. That should be a challengeable opportunity, and ended up resulting in, naturally, the Atlanta Falcons marching the ball down the field, spiking that with 1 second left, kicking the game-tying field goal, and then winning it in overtime. So again, I don't personally care. I made money on the game. I'm happy that from a futures perspective, it helps the Tampa Bay Buccaneers not make the playoffs. So I'm happy about that. I'm happy about my Tampa Bay teaser. I don't care. But I care about the fact that this could screw me out of a bet in the future. And it's just not right. There needs to be a better system here that the NFL needs to figure it out so that it makes it a little bit more fair and equitable to all of the teams in every situation. Because it's funny, like there's a lot of Atlanta Falcons fans last night. Oh, hey, the Falcons, you must just hate the Falcons or you're just bitter. Now, what if this happens to your team next? Like it could easily go against the Falcons next week. It needs to be a better system. Inside 2 minutes, maybe you challenge it. We'll talk to the ref expert later. So I also like the comments. Chris, dressed for a Browns pick later in the show. Jack, loving the fall-inspired fit. This is a fall-inspired fit. We're going to get into some crisper weather here. It's been really warm here on the East Coast. It's been actually unseasonably warm. Looking forward to it cooling down. Okay, speaking of being warm, hot, in fact, we're going to go to our college football betting expert now. Oh, before we do that, I got to tell you about the $5. Here, we got the ad read. So this is kind of crazy. You'll notice if you've been with me, if you've been following me on Twitter for years and years or however long, we've never done something like this before. So my marketing team comes back and says, you want to run this promo for week 5? I said, what is it? It said $5 for everything for week 5. All the props, all the bets, everything. I said, why would we do that? We're having a great season. We don't need to do this for $5. They said they want to do it. And what they wanted to really promote is this ladder bet opportunity. So what we're doing, we've done really well on ladder bets. What ladder bets are, we're talking about betting alt lines up and up and up. For example, Nico Collins last week over, I don't know what it was, 71.5 receiving yards. That ends up closing at like 78.5 or something like that. We bet at 71.5. We also bet the alt overs at like 80, 90, 100 plus, etc., and won all of those. We are going to be doing the same thing on a bet this week. We haven't given it out yet because I don't know, the books seem to be a lot slower with some of their prop bets this week for whatever reason. We will be giving out some more later on the show for free to you guys. Anyways, if you want to get involved this week, we're going to be giving out a ladder bet, and we're going to be giving away to people who got involved in this all of the winnings of what a $100 bet would be. So, for example, a plus 550 on an alt over on a prop bet, that'll be $550 that we'll give away to one of the random people that joined this. And it's only $5 to get all of our picks this week. And we are doing absolutely great. I think $100 better is up over $3,000 so far through 4 weeks of the season. So this is a 95% discount. Where the hell is the code? I don't, you got the code up there, Matt? I don't even know what the code is. I guess you got to go to sharp.football. Go to sharp.football. There is no code because it's if you just go to sharp.football, you'll see a link or you can scan this thing and you'll be able to get everything for this week for $5. Okay. All right, moving on. Let's bring in, as we were talking about staying hot, not getting cool. We're going to go to our college betting expert, Ryan McCrystal. He's got some great bets for us this weekend. Welcome in, Ryan. Look, you're off of an undefeated 2-0-1 weekend with us last Friday. You're a silly 9-2 on the show. So let's keep it rolling if we can. First game on deck for you. It's an early kick. Missouri is traveling to Texas A&M, noon Eastern time. Missouri is the undefeated team. We got a battle of a pass-centric Missouri team versus a run-centric Texas A&M team. You're backing the team that airs it out. Welcome to the show. Dive into why you think we should be backing Missouri on the road.
Yeah, exciting game in the SEC, and kind of a tough one to pick for a couple different reasons. It really has a lot to do with Missouri. They've been really sloppy so far this season. They return a ton of talent. Brady Cook, their quarterback, is back. Their top 3 receivers from last year, including Luther Burden, who's a likely first-round pick. And yet, despite all that talent, they've gotten off to kind of a slow start, struggling with Boston College and Vanderbilt. And so I think that's why they're underdogs, because they just have not looked like a team that's ready to go on the road and beat a decent Texas A&M squad. But when I went and dug a little bit deeper into those games to try to figure out what happened, why were they so close, I think there might be a little bit of luck, bad luck involved, and just sort of some fluky situations. Just to throw an example out there, against Vanderbilt 2 weeks ago, they had consecutive drives where they got inside the Vandy 10-yard line. They came away with 3 combined points on those 2 drives. I mean, that's the kind of thing you could say bad teams don't come up big with touchdowns in those situations. Of course, that's true, but this is a team that returns basically all of their weapons on offense. They are not a bad offense in the big picture. So I think we can probably chalk that up to they just were cold, a little bit of bad luck in a tough situation. And if they punch those 2 in for touchdowns, they win that easily, and our perception of that game shifts dramatically just on a couple of plays down near the goal line. And digging further into the numbers, that kind of situation just kind of kept coming up for me when I kept seeing these more advanced metrics saying that this is pretty much the same Missouri team as last year in a lot of ways. And so, based on the fact that they're returning so much talent and we're seeing a lot of stats point that direction, I think ultimately we're going to see the results follow. It hasn't happened yet, but I think this could be a situation where we see it happen. To throw another example out there from a big picture perspective, last year the run game was a big part of Missouri's success. Cody Schrader, who went to the NFL, was a big part of that, but they've replaced him with Nate Noel, a good running back from App State, Marcus Carroll, another transfer that they brought in. They've got a good backfield once again, and their offensive line played a big role last year. Last year they ranked 19th in opponent-adjusted yards before contact. This year they rank 11th. So they're doing it again. They've got talent in the backfield. They should be able to continue running the ball. And so a lot of those types of underlying metrics are saying this is still a very good football team. They just kind of haven't been able to punch it in near the end zone a couple times, which have changed the way the results look. But they still came away with those wins, which is critical. They're still undefeated, very much in the playoff picture. I think this is a situation where they can turn it around. Now, to talk about Texas A&M for a minute, the big storyline here is our quarterback situation. Connor Wegman, highly recruited guy, couldn't stay healthy last year, can't stay healthy this year. He is a game-time decision with a shoulder injury this week. I'm going to assume he's not playing in this game, partially because they said he was a game time decision last week and he didn't even come out and warm up for the game. So I don't necessarily trust Texas A&M's reporting of the injury. But also Marcel Reed, who has replaced him, is probably a better fit for this offense. Their offensive coordinator this year is Colin Klein, who came over from Kansas State. Obviously, we know Kansas State is a run-oriented offense, incorporating a lot of running back runs into that offense. And Reed is a much better fit for that type of scheme than Wegman. Now, the sort of the both upside and downside to that is Reed brings a chaotic energy, almost a Manziel-like energy to the quarterback position, but he doesn't have Manziel's talent. So that kind of leans towards a negative trait of his, because when he drops back to pass, he just can't get rid of the ball. He can't make a decision. He just stands back there, patting the ball, waiting to try to make a play, scrambling around. It's chaotic. And against the Missouri defense, which ranks 9th in opponent-adjusted pressure rate, he's in for trouble in this game, I think. And when you look at, I'll just run through his numbers under pressure real quick. 27% completion rate, 3.4 yards per attempt, 18% sack rate. That's problematic. Now, if Wegman starts or if he's available to go, maybe if they can turn to him later in the game, that could be a possibility as well. You lose Reed's playmaking ability, but Wegman is more the type of quarterback that can kind of keep you on schedule. Only a 7% sack rate under pressure the last 2 seasons. So he is more of the guy who's going to avoid the negative plays, whereas Reed potentially gives you the opportunity for some big plays, but also the opportunity for some big plays going the other way. So it's a tough decision that they definitely have to make. But, regardless of who starts, because of the reasons I laid out with some of those underlying metrics saying that Missouri is still basically the same team as last year, I'm going to trust that their offense finally shows up and that they cover the spread on the road.
All right, so this one is a solid 2.5 everywhere. Let's talk about another game where you're actually laying some points here. And Ryan, you're going to really have to convince me on this Tennessee-Arkansas game. And the reason why is because I have been backing Arkansas the last 2 weeks and winning those bets ATS. Now you're trying to convince me to lay, 13.5 points? It's up to 13.5 points with Tennessee on the road on Saturday night in Arkansas. Take on this fiery Arkansas squad. Why don't you show us why we should be laying the big number with Tennessee here?
Yeah, I was surprised by this line. I actually thought it'd be over 2 touchdowns, but I kind of get it because it's a look-ahead spot for Tennessee. They got Florida next week. Even though Florida's not good, it's still a big rivalry game that they care about. And then Alabama the week after. So this is potentially that look-ahead letdown spot for Tennessee. But I still really like it because there's just a lot of areas where this looks like a lopsided matchup. A big reason why I'm on Tennessee is I'm just not buying Arkansas as a good team. Arkansas's best win so far is a loss to Oklahoma State. Now, they outplayed Oklahoma State. Anybody who watched that game, and it had a pretty good audience because of the time slot that it was in, anybody who saw that game knows they should have won that game, and they just couldn't close it out in true Arkansas fashion. But if you watch the show the past couple of weeks, we've talked about Oklahoma State and correctly picked against them. And I've laid out a lot of reasons why that's just not a good Oklahoma State football team. So if Arkansas's best performance is a loss to that pretty mediocre Oklahoma State football team, it's hard for me to be impressed by them. Now, to dig into this particular matchup a little bit more, one of the things Arkansas has going for it is Talon Green at quarterback, transferred from Boise State. Great athlete. But like I was just saying about Marcel Reed and Texas A&M, he holds onto the ball too long. He invites a ton of pressure, and then things start to fall apart. Let's run through his numbers versus pressure real quick. 29.8% completion rate, 17% sack rate, 19% positive EPA rate versus pressure, which ranks dead last in the SEC. And he's going to face a ton of pressure against James Pierce and this Tennessee pass rush. When quarterbacks take a traditional drop back of 3 or more steps against Tennessee, so on the plays when they're holding the ball longer, which Green consistently does, Tennessee has a 52% pressure rate. That ranks 7th in the country. This is a very good Tennessee defense. I know that they have been known for their offense since Josh Heupel got there, but this is legitimately one of the best defenses in the country. They're going to get after Green, and they're going to cause a lot of problems for him because he just does not handle pressure well. Now, what if Arkansas pivots to more of a run-heavy attack and try to slow the game down and keep it close? I don't think that's going to work out for them because this is probably the best rushing defense in the country. Against FBS opponents, this is one of the craziest stats I've seen all season. In their games against FBS teams, running backs have gained a combined total of -8 yards before contact against Tennessee. That means their average rushing attempt is getting contacted behind the line of scrimmage. That's insane to do that. They played 3 games against FBS opponents to sustain that over a 3-game stretch. I don't care if they were playing the 3 worst teams in FBS even, but one of them was Oklahoma, a decent squad. That's insane to be creating that type of pressure. So Arkansas will not be able to run the ball against Tennessee. They're going to have to throw the ball. They're going to have to hope Taylon Green makes some plays. And like I laid out there, I don't know that he's going to be able to. Now, on the other side of the ball, Nico Iamaleava, he's going to be able to carve up this Arkansas defense. You're probably familiar with Tennessee's offense by now. So I'll run through a few stats on the Arkansas side that raise some red flags. Arkansas ranks 130th in opponent adjusted pressure rate. So Iamaleava is not going to be facing pressure in this game. They're ranked 117th in yards after the catch allowed. That's a problem if you're going up against a wide receiver like Squirrel White, who is dangerous after the catch. They're also without their best quarterback, who's injured in this game. In fact, their best cornerback suiting up for them in this game is probably Dunico Slaughter, who was a cast-off from Tennessee. Tennessee kind of pushed him out the door last year because he was going to lose his starting job. So, despite this being a dangerous look-ahead spot, in college football, obviously it's risky to take those bets. I think this is an extremely lopsided matchup. So I'm going to trust the Vols to take care of business.
All right, now we're also going to be laying the big number in another big-time game. This is a Saturday afternoon game, Ohio State versus Iowa. You like Ohio State, you're going to be laying the big number here. The spread currently is 18 to 18.5 points. You can get 18. It opened a lot higher than this, opened 20.5 at most spots, down to 18. Why do you think that Ohio State is going to get the cover against Iowa? I don't really want to watch a game featuring Iowa, but if I got money on it, that's the only thing that'll draw me to it. So talk to me about this one.
Yeah, I think the reason why the line has shifted towards Iowa a little bit is, again, this is a look-ahead spot. So we're living a little dangerously taking Ohio State when they've got Oregon on the schedule next week. So they certainly have their eye on Oregon. But if you remember Ohio State's offseason and how it played out, almost everybody came back. This is a very, very veteran-laden football team, a lot like Michigan last year, where everybody came back to try to make a push for the playoff. That's what happened for Ohio State this year. They're really focused. And if you've watched any of their games, which I don't blame you if you haven't, because they haven't faced good competition yet, but one of the things that keeps coming up on broadcasts of their games is how their wide receivers have really taken to Chip Kelly's offense, their new offensive coordinator there, and how they have bought into blocking, which is critical for his scheme. And that's meaningful to me because Ohio State, obviously, if you go to Ohio State as a highly recruited wide receiver, you are thinking first-round draft pick, right? And those types of players can be sometimes difficult to get to buy into blocking at the college level because they've just got their eyes on a big paycheck in the NFL. And they have fully bought in. A lot of these guys, like Emeka Egbuka, he's fully expected to be a first-round pick next year. He's got his eyes on that. And yet he is buying into being a blocker in this scheme because Chip Kelly's offense is a lot of short passes trying to get the ball into space, and the receivers have to block to help each other out, and they have bought in. That tells me something a little bit about the Ohio State's mindset for this veteran group and how if they're buying into doing the little things like that to try to win games, even against teams that are not super competitive with them, I think they're going to be able to maintain the focus against Iowa in order to avoid that potential letdown spot. Now, let's talk a little bit more about that offense in this particular matchup. As I said, Chip Kelly, it's a lot of short passes. In fact, Ohio State ranks dead last in the country in throws of 15 or more yards downfield. So that's a big change. I think that's actually a bad news for Iowa because Iowa has a great secondary. They've got a great defensive scheme. They can scheme up ways to defend you downfield and take away those opportunities. But if Ohio State gets the ball in space, Iowa does not have the athletes to match up with Jeremiah Smith and those guys who are so dangerous after the catch. Ohio State ranks 10th in yards after the catch so far this season. Iowa's defense ranks 40th, which obviously isn't terrible, but look who they've played. Their best opponents so far have been Iowa State and Minnesota, two teams that are two of the slowest, most deliberate, conservative offenses in the country. They've had kind of a mediocre performance in terms of preventing yards after the catch against those guys. So I think they're in trouble. And then to make matters worse, Iowa has no pass rush this year. They rank 102nd in opponent-adjusted pressure rate. So even though Ohio State doesn't typically sit in the pocket and throw downfield, if you're going to let a veteran quarterback like Will Howard sit back there and find Jeremiah Smith and Emeka Egbuka and others down the field, he's going to take advantage of those handful of opportunities that he gets. So I think Ohio State simply puts too many points on the board in this one for Iowa to be able to keep this relatively close and cover the spread.
Well, Ryan, points are not synonymous with Iowa football, so we'll see if you're right on this one. Look, Ryan is 9-2 so far on this show, so he just gave you 3 bets. If you missed any of them, if you're tuning in late, go back, rewind it, listen to his rationale. One of the best in the business, in my opinion. Ryan, good luck this weekend. And make sure you guys follow him on X as well as all of his articles up at sharpfootballanalysis.com. Let's go ahead and answer a couple of your questions here before we start talking a little bit more NFL. Let me scroll around here. Okay. Yeah, this is probably not Steph Diggs. Hopefully it's not. Actually, Steph, if it is you, you've got better things to be doing right now. But I do think that Steph brings, when we look at revenge games, we look at games with familiar opponents, whether it's coaches that used to coach somewhere, go somewhere else, teams that know a little bit more about the system. I do think that benefits. I'm not talking about necessarily like Sam Darnold taking on the Jets because that was so far removed. Yeah, he and even in the interviews, like I played like crap in New York. It's not really their fault. So, I'm sure he wouldn't mind winning this game, and he wants to win it because he's Minnesota Viking and he wants to play well and keep a job and have a career. But that's not what we're talking about necessarily. If Steph Diggs in Houston knows a little bit about what Josh Allen likes and doesn't like, and if he's filling in DeMeco Ryans on some of that information, it's only going to help the Houston Texans, right? He understands the types of pressures that give them problems, the types of ways that you could fuse the offense of the Buffalo Bills in certain down and distances. That's obviously going to be a positive for the Houston Texans. So I think that's something that's not going to hurt and could potentially help. Andrew, no, this is not the bathroom. This is obviously my office. I've shown some videos of this before. I did have this custom built so that I can see out. And more importantly, I got TVs all around here. So you can see in as you're walking by, keep up to track of the games when I head over to the film room over there or some of my other TV viewing out there. You're always able to keep track of the games, and all my screens are here. I did this intentionally so I can get a good look at the lines no matter where I am. I don't want solid walls here. Are you kidding me? We need to be able to see the odds screen at all times as you're walking past this room. So this is the future, not the bathroom. You have the Falcons to miss the playoffs. Yeah, I mean, the Falcons win. Yeah, Brian, I understand the issues there. They do have a cakewalk schedule, Matthew, late. So it's good looking for the Falcons moving forward. And obviously the best thing about it is Kirk Cousins looks so much better, right? Kirk Cousins looks like the announcers last night were talking about Al and Kirk Herbstreit. We're talking about how, Cousins' pass would trail off and he didn't have quite the velocity at the end. I'm watching, dude, this is Mooney dropping two passes that are hitting him right in the chest. The obvious one was the wide open one late. But there was another one that was earlier where they were saying, oh, it's just this, he's not getting enough push on the ball and that last little bit. He's looking a lot better than he was week one. So I'm excited for Atlanta Falcons backers. This is definitely a positive outcome for them. Obviously, if you bet against them and you faded them, not as great for you. Okay, with that said, we'll continue to get all your questions up here later throughout the show. So go over to YouTube, make sure that you're sharing your questions. But now we got to pivot, to get back to the bread and butter of the show. Love talking with Ryan about college football because he's great at what he does. Hopefully you guys love his analysis, the way that he breaks down games very logically, looks at the different units and their matchups. That's how I love to break games down as well. But we now go back to the NFL, the bread and butter of the show. And we welcome in Pam Maldonado. And Pam is, of course, doing really well on the show as well, off of a 3-1 weekend last weekend. I think you actually might have been a little bit better than that on some of the other things that you were sharing over at Sharp Football Analysis. You're 5-2 over the last couple of weeks. You got some dogs, you got some props for us today. You got a couple picks in a variety of these games, Pam. So let's dive right in. First up, we've got the New York Jets catching the short number of 2.5 points over in London against the Minnesota Vikings. I'm really wondering who this Jets team is, Pam, because they have played the number one toughest schedule of defenses. They've taken on 3 top 10 defenses and the Patriots. So it hasn't been easy on Aaron Rodgers. But on the flip side, this defense hasn't really played very many good opponents either. They've played the 4th easiest schedule of offenses, including the passing attacks the last 3 weeks of number 28 Tennessee, number 31 New England, and number 32 Denver. So a big step up for both sides of a big step down for their defense, a big step up for their offense. Welcome to the show, Pam. Let's hear why you like the Jets in London and a prop that you've got on this one as well.
Well, I first want to commend you on your room because I didn't know that you had all those TV set up. Kudos to me because I finally have a television for the
I
first
know.
time since 2007.
I
So
remember.
I'm way behind. You said this is the future. Correct. I'm behind. So, yes, I do like the Jets plus 2.5 against the Vikings. This line actually moved away from me because it opened 1.5, but I don't fear line movement, so I'm still okay with it for some of the reasons that you mentioned. Aaron Rodgers and company has played a really tough schedule of defenses, including last week in a 10-9 loss to the Broncos. And I was on the Broncos, so that worked out the way it should have, maybe not with the outright win. But you went from facing one of the hardest teams in the secondary to now facing a far more favorable matchup with the Vikings. The Vikings aren't necessarily giving up points until they did, but they were giving up a lot of passing yardage. In fact, they're the league's worst against the pass, leading in total passing yards and passing yards allowed per game. And the Jets do have a really good receiving core, but because of the defenses they have faced, we haven't really seen it come to fruition. Rodgers has Garrett Wilson, who's been the focus of opposing defenses. Rodgers and Wilson are still trying to figure out that on-field chemistry. You see glimpses of it, and it's going to get there. I have belief in that. And this is the game that I think that it could actually click because of those vulnerabilities from the Vikings. There's also Mike Williams and Ellen Lazard, who I think is going to have a big-time game because that chemistry with Rodgers is already built. Stemming back from the days when he was with the Packers. Now Lazard is having a resurgent season, and in part because of that chemistry and the lack of chemistry with the others. So because I think you're going up against a really favorable secondary, the Vikings struggling, that's potentially going to lead to a breakout game for this Jets offense. Now the Vikings, we saw it. It's kind of been a bend, don't break type of situation where they showed significant vulnerability. They gave Jordan Love, torched them for 4 passing touchdowns in his first game back from injury. But before that, they had allowed only 2 passing touchdowns combined from CJ Stroud and Brock Purdy. They were giving up all of the yardage, so in my mind, it was bound to explode, and we did see that with Love. Now, also because this game is in London, that does eliminate the home field advantage for the Vikings, which could really play into favoring the Jets. But it is a bit of a scary wager because the Vikings against the spread and their cover margin. The Vikings are the 4th best cover margin by a team to start 4-0 straight up and against the spread in the last 40 seasons. They're covering plus 15.9 cover margin. Now, a food for thought is each of the other three teams, ended up reaching the Super Bowl. The 99 Rams, the 2007 Patriots, and the 92 Bills. So if you think that the Vikings are the real deal, then maybe them to reach the Super Bowl. But I really like Aaron Rodgers here in the spot to bounce back. And because I mentioned Allen Lazard, anytime touchdown plus 250 is my go-to prop for this matchup. Lazard and Rodgers, I already talked about the proven connection because he has 21 career touchdowns together, including 2 this season. Now, the Vikings' zone-heavy defense, it plays right into Lazard's strengths as a route runner, especially from the slot where he leaves the Jets with a 39% snap rate. This guy is 6'5". He is a primed red zone target, and Aaron Rodgers has that trust in him, which we know that's his go-to guy. He has that. He looks for that every season. Who can I go to most, and who can I trust? So because his ability to find soft spots in that zone coverage, combined with his 6'5" stature, it really makes him a serious threat at the goal line. I like him plus 250 for anytime touchdown.
That's a great point, Pam, that you made on that home field advantage. Minnesota going from what is a great home field advantage to now having to play in unfamiliar territory. They've never played over in London, obviously, in this stadium before. So that's going to be a change of pace for them for sure. Need to account for that when you're betting the game. Speaking of accounting for something, the Carolina Panthers now on a roll with Andy Dalton. Now, they don't cover the spread last week against the Cincinnati Bengals, but they absolutely are continuing to play pretty well offensively. And what people don't realize is this offensive line is really good for the Carolina Panthers. So now they're going on the road to take on the Chicago Bears. Talk to us a little bit about this game. The Chicago Bears are laying points at home. This is a fairly large number that could only come when the Bears are laying points against a team like the Carolina Panthers. I like the way that the Carolina Panthers have become more professional. I think they're going to be able to have a little bit more success running the football. The Windy City nickname of the Chicago area should be put to the test because there is going to be some wind. We'll talk about that later. Why do you think that the Carolina Panthers should be the side in this one?
This is also a line that moved against me. The Panthers plus 3.5 is now Panthers plus 4, but I liked it. I liked the over last week because of Andy Dalton's resurgence. He is such an improved production for the Panthers compared to that of Bryce Young, and it's in part, I read it in Rich Rebar's worksheet, it's because he has a far more quicker release, one of the quickest releases in the NFL. Now that's really helpful when you're going up against a Bears defense who is ranked 22nd in pressure rate. And the Bears defense overall looks pretty solid, but that run defense has been the Achilles heel for this team, allowing 94 rushing yards to a single back in back-to-back games and having a 71% opponent rushing touchdown percentage. That's second worst in the league, which means they aren't giving up passing touchdowns, but they have given up 5 rushing scores. This could really play right into running back Chuba Hubbard's strengths and help to keep this game close. You mentioned the wind. Well, the run game isn't affected by the wind, so I think Hubbard could have himself a really big day. Because of that ground game success, Dalton and the passing game could also follow. We've seen an emerging passing game from Dalton. Enter Deontay Johnson, who's become a key target for Dalton. 15 catches, 205 yards, 2 touchdowns in the last 2 games. Andy Dalton really has brought this offense to life, and it's underrated. You mentioned the offensive line. It's been great at protection. It's been great at helping find some of those holes for Chuba Hubbard and now Deontay Johnson, crucial for moving the chains and scoring points. The Bears look good on paper. This is the eye test for me. They look good on paper. However, if you look at the schedule of opposing quarterbacks that the Bears have faced, it's been fairly easy, including Will Levis. So Dalton, I'm not going to put him in the elite category here, but he is operating highly effective, and he's not afraid to throw the ball deep. Well, deep balls tend to surprise defenses. So the prop that I like for this one is Chuba Hubbard anytime touchdown plus 115. And now that I'm thinking about it, probably also his rushing yardage, but I'm going to go with his anytime touchdown plus 115 because he's been on fire. He has over 100 rushing yards in each of the last 2 games, plus a rushing touchdown and a receiving score. He has great vision. He has patience at the line of scrimmage. He has incredible acceleration. And the Bears' run defense struggling, as mentioned, 94 rushing yards allowed in back-to-back games to the top back, giving up 5 rushing touchdowns in just 4 games, 3 from inside the red zone. Now you have Hubbard's increased workload now that they have Dalton behind center, his dual threat capability of being also a receiving back, plus money. You're getting plus money, 115. It looks pretty solid.
All right, there we go. Now let's pivot a little bit. I've got a couple rapid fire questions for you. We're going to be hitting on the Saints and the Chiefs and the Broncos and the Raiders. You like the under in the Broncos and the Raiders. You like the Saints catching the points on Monday Night Football against the Kansas City Chiefs on the road at Arrowhead. Talk to us a little bit about both of these bets and why you like them.
I think I'm the only person on the planet taking the lowest totals of the week. I'm not scared to take the Raiders at the Broncos under 36. Broncos defense, top tier. 2nd in yards allowed, 3rd in points allowed. The Raiders offense, mega struggling because every player on the offensive line is on the injury list. Gardner Minshew is coming off a really ugly game. Denver's going to be an even bigger test. Broncos rookie quarterback Bo Nix, inconsistent at best, especially under pressure, take the under 36. And for the Saints, plus 5.5 at the Chiefs, that is my best bet for the week, and it is Monday Night Football. But Patrick Mahomes, as great of a quarterback as he has been, the Chiefs' offense is not dominating by any means of the stretch. He's throwing downfield far less, struggling with his new receivers because that core is also on highly injured with players out on IR. And he himself has even admitted to poor play in an interview in a postgame conference. So you look at the data and the proof is in the stats. He's outside of the top 10 in quarterback metrics, most of them, and has thrown 5 interceptions, which is top of the leaderboard in the NFL. It's not something you want to lead in. And 35% of Mahomes' passes have been behind the line of scrimmage, at or behind the line of scrimmage. So you have a struggling offense in the Chiefs, which is really weird to say, against a really good Saints defense. Only 1 passing touchdown allowed, forcing turnovers at the 3rd highest rate. So I would imagine that a Mahomes interception prop is probably heavily juiced. The Chiefs 4-0, but those wins have not been convincing. So the value is coming in on the Saints, with the Chiefs still trying to figure it out offense. I'll take the Saints plus 5.5.
All right, now you like that under as well. Is that just because you don't believe the Raiders are going to have a lot of success here? We will be touching on this game later, as I will have a prop on some aspect of this game. But what do you think about that one?
I lean to the under, but I fear Saints. If you have a defense that's really struggling, if you have an offense that's really struggling in the Chiefs, that defense is going to eventually wear out because the offense isn't staying on the field long enough. So I don't have a strong opinion on the total. I would lean to the under, but I think Saints 5.5. This could be like a 1 or 2 point game coming down to a field goal.
Yeah, and on that Patrick Mahomes interception, I was looking at that actually yesterday. It's not actually juiced that much, even though he's been throwing them. I think it was like minus 115, minus 120. So that could be an interesting look as well there. Pam, thanks so much. Anything else you got for us before we let you go?
I agree with a lot of Ryan was saying, especially with Missouri plus 2.5. I know that's college football related, but as soon as he said that he posted that, I love that because that's also on my college football card.
There you go. Well, you guys make sure that you're following Pam on X. Make sure you're reading her content on the NFL over at sharpfootballanalysis.com. We're going to be getting into some best bets from an NFL referee analyst in a second. Before I do that, I want to go through a couple more of your questions here. Peter asks, are the player props part of the $5 package? Yes, everything is part of the $5 package for this week. So you head over to sharp.football. Everything is $5. $5 for week 5. Pretty simple to remember. Just go to sharp.football. There is no coupon code that you need. I was just told you don't need a coupon code. Just go to sharp.football. You will get 95% off week 5. Try it out. We got bets on sides, totals, player props, and we've been having a great season so far. So get involved if you're interested. Go to sharp.football. Only $5. Joel just bought the $5 special. Appreciate that, Joel. Hayden said Chuba is an underrated pass catcher as well. One of the props that you'll see when you go over there is I actually like Chuba's longest rushing attempt over. I do think Chuba is going to be getting fed the ball here a fair amount. I think that is the weakness of the Chicago Bears is that run defense. Their strength naturally is that pass defense. They're weaker against the run this year than they were last year. They take advantage of that on the ground with Chuba in what will be likely a pretty windy day, which I will talk about that in a little bit as well. Mike asks, any thoughts on the Rams game? If you were involved, if you were getting I'll just share this one with you because we already bet this. The number has moved a ton. One of the benefits of being a client, you get these things before they move because we will move the market many times when we're releasing games. Early in the week, we bet the Rams, Packers over 47. This number is out to 48.5, and there's some 49s on the screen. So Mike asked, any thoughts on the Ram game? Matt asked, over, way over. It's a dome game. It was actually going to be one of the props, but I made a last-second change, guys, in one of the props that we're going to be sharing later. It was going to one of the props on that game. I've already given out to subscribers over at Sharp Football, so go check that out. But I do like a prop on this one as well, a longest completion prop for somebody involved in this game. I do agree. I think that there's plenty of edges for both these teams offensively in this game, and it's on the fast track in a dome, which obviously the Packers haven't played in a dome since they put up a ridiculous score in the first half there against the Dallas Cowboys in the playoffs last year. Okay, with that said, let's go ahead and bring on our NFL ref expert, Joe Gibbs. We got Joe backstage? Yes, we do. Okay. Joe is going to be talking to us a little bit about one of his best bets for this weekend. But before we dive into this, Joe, I want your take on reviewing penalties in the final 2 minutes of the game. Look, my take on this, Joe, is that we have better cameras. We're showing more angles of these plays in real time. The audience at home sees all this stuff. If integrity of the game is so important, especially in that example that I showed earlier, where it was a clear face mask, the announcers said it before the penalty was even called. They were guessing that it was going to be a face mask. They call only the offensive holding. They say they might have missed a face mask. They show the replay. It clearly missed a face mask. And the next play has not been snapped. There has not been another snap yet at all. When are we going to get the ability, do you think, to challenge these? What do you think the right protocol is maybe late in a game to utilize a challenge on what you think is a missed penalty? Do you think we're ever going to get to this stage in the near future?
I doubt it. There's an old saying, any publicity is good publicity. And I actually think the NFL likes this controversy because whether it's good or whether it's bad, you're talking about them. Belichick has suggested a challenge system, as you mentioned. I think it's a great idea. It should be similar to like fumbles or things of that nature, where you can challenge a face mask or whatever. I don't think it's ever going to happen, though. I just don't see it happening.
Okay, so it's bad news for anybody out there who was hoping that it would happen. And if Belichick's on the side of me, then I feel good about my side.
Yes.
But it may not ever happen. So we move on to Sunday Night Football. One of your favorite angles of the week is, let's talk a little bit about Sean Hockley as he relates to Cowboys and Steelers. Everybody out there should be familiar with Sean Hockley, especially if you're let's not say old, because old's a derogatory word. I don't like to be telling people old. Let's just say experienced. If you're an experienced fan, such as myself and such as you, Joe, you remember Ed Hockley, Sean's father, and Sean's picked up where his father left off. He loves that TV time, right? He loves to be the center of attention. So talk to us about your angle on the Cowboys Steelers, where we're going to see plenty of Sean Hockley on Sunday night.
Yeah, Sean Hockley, he's Jerry Jones's favorite referee. I say that jokingly. Before I get into the numbers, there was a game in 2021 Thanksgiving Day. It was the Raiders at the Cowboys, and Hockley nabbed Dallas for 14 penalties for 166 yards in a Cowboys loss. And Jerry Jones came out after the game and publicly criticized Hockley, sort of questioning his ability to be a head referee. So there's a history there. Dallas has a losing record with Hockley. That's for starters right there. So the game itself, just over 53% of penalties this season are being called on the offense. Okay, so keep that in mind. The Hockley crew right now, through 1 month, 76.5% of their overall penalties are being assessed on the offense. That's number one in the league.
23% over average.
Yes. Now, we're only talking 1 month. It's a small sample size, but this crew generally calls more than average offensive penalties. This year, they've just taken it to another level. Okay, so we've got to keep that in mind. So let's get to the Cowboys themselves. They're the number one or co-number one ranked team for penalties per game on the road. Again, it's a small sample size. They've only done 2 games, but they've had a history of this since Mike McCarthy got there. They're a sloppy team. Mike McCarthy mentioned it last week. We've got to clean it up. The problem is he's been saying that for 4 years, and they haven't cleaned it up yet. So keep that in mind. High offensive penalties from Hockley. The Cowboys' offense and offensive line in particular is a disaster. You put that together against Pittsburgh in that stadium on a Sunday night, they're walking into a buzzsaw. You're going to have the Steelers' defense pinning their ears back. You're going to have a shaky Cowboys offensive line, and you're going to have Hockley's crew who are looking for any opportunity to throw a flag on a false start, an eligible man downfield, offensive holding, things of that nature. So right there, we have problems. As far as the offensive line specifically, the Cowboys ranked second in the 2 key categories, offensive holding and false starts. The combination of those 2 penalty categories, Dallas ranked second behind Houston in total penalties committed in those 2 key categories. The Steelers at home, very good. They've only played 1 home game this season, 3 penalties in that game. So it's a 1-game sample size, very small. But they have a history of being very disciplined at home. So you contrast the Steelers' efficiency with the Cowboys' inefficiency, with a refereeing crew that has a history with Dallas, not a good history. To me, this screams Pittsburgh all the way.
Pittsburgh all the way. So Pittsburgh is laying the short number,
Yep.
and naturally, I think the public is going to come a little bit more on the Dallas Cowboys, just failing to believe that they could actually fall to this level where they're losing to Justin Fields in primetime. But the reality is, as you said, the refereeing could go a little bit in favor of the Pittsburgh Steelers. And this is a good Mike Tomlin bounce back spot at home after that loss. I think they botched a little bit late in that game with the timeout not being utilized. They come home to Pittsburgh with it.
Yeah.
Guess what, Mike? You don't have 4 timeouts to start this game. You don't have that extra timeout in the first half of this game here. So you're going to have to deal with only 3. Make them count. That's great, Joe. Thank you so much for your information. You got anything else for us?
No, big thing really is just this Hockley crew. They love, like you said, they love the camera. These offensive penalties are just through the roof, and Dallas is walking into a buzzsaw.
All right. Well, we'll see how that goes. I want them to post some more props. I got a couple of looks on props. Thanks so much, Joe. I got some more prop looks on this game. You can find Joe over at Sharp Football Analysis, where he's sharing tons of information every week, and he's got his detailed article on all the crews, all the games, breaks down some of the biggest ones, some of the biggest advantages. He's got trends on all the crews. So if you're interested in that information to just kind of incorporate it into your handicapping, or you just like to be, you're just curious about it, head over to Sharp Football Analysis, and you can find that there right on the homepage is an article there. Before we get into some of my favorite prop bets for this week, I want to go ahead and discuss, I want to go ahead and take a couple of your questions. So let's dig into some of your questions. And I am also attempting to share something with our clients before we start talking about it. Let's get to a couple of your questions, though. Matt, great news for Steelers. Yes, greatest arms in the NFL as well. Jacob, you are correct. Seasoned veterans of watching football, not old. 100% true there. It's 2-2. NCKBTC says it's 2-2. Definitely look at the podcast. If you're subscribing now to our podcast feed, go back and watch, I think it's yesterday's episode, where Rich Rebar and Ray Summerlin went on. At the end of the show, they share their two favorite players. Each one picks a player. They call it the Uncut Gems. Players that might be overlooked, aren't going to be well owned, that they think are going to have a chance to break through. And I believe it was Rich who was all over the Tutu Atwell stuff this week. So if you want to learn more about Tutu and why you could have a good week, make sure that you head over there. What do we got here, Peter? I got all my papers. See, we got all the lines, all the notes. You got the straight edge there they don't call it a ruler. At engineering school, this is a straight edge that we use here. Where is it? This way. One way here. That straight line, wherever it is. Hard to see backwards on the camera. These are not my notes. These are my betting. Here's my notes. Okay. Let's see. Pam touched on the Carolina game. This is Peter. Do you think the wind will keep Deontay Johnson under his yardage prop? So actually, we've got an interesting bet on that pretty soon. Peter, not Deontay Johnson specifically, but a prop related to that. I do think that the wind is going to potentially be a factor in this one. Let's see. What else do we got here? Guy loves holding. Yes, Chris, he does love holding. Weather in England for the Jets game. So George asks this question. Yes, there is going to be some weather there. It could impact. Aaron Rodgers says that he's fine. He practiced in full, but he gets a hit on that leg. Could it become an issue? Absolutely, I think that it could. I'm not a big fan of playing an older quarterback who's coming off an Achilles with a knee injury already there on a surface that could be, I think it's hard. It could be slick. I don't know if it's going to be the best against a pass rush and a defense that blitzes a ton. I might have a slight difference of opinion there from Pam on that game. She likes the Jets. I haven't done anything with the Vikings, but that's an interesting look. I'm going to see where this line goes from here. Marcos, when does strength of schedule get updated? Answer every single week. On Tuesday, we will share it with you for this upcoming week. So Tuesday, we start looking at it ahead for the upcoming week. Let's see. Jason, is anyone who's scoring up Miami New England game? Yeah, it's a game you certainly would not be interested in backing the over, although all the computer models, myself included, probably are not going to say go under 36. It's one of those games where you just kind of plug your nose and just take it. What do you think about Bengals plus 2.5? Some respected money coming in on Cincinnati. Philip, if you go back and look at the Cincinnati Bengals and who they played, their games are very close, generally speaking. They step up in competition when they're playing good opponents, and I have teased the Cincinnati Bengals. So if you're a subscriber, which, by the way, for $5, you can get in on week 5, all the bets, all the player props, everything. Make sure you go over to Sharp Football Analysis and you can get involved in that. Go to sharp.football. That's the link to get into the $5 for week 5. And we got tons of props. I'm going to be releasing one momentarily as well. So the subscribers get a nice little first crack at that one. Is Ravens over 25.5 team total a lock? I do not believe in stating things as locks. I do think the Ravens should be able to have some success here, but I don't think that it would be what we would consider to be a lock. Okay. Let's see here. Let's get on to the props. So first, I am going to send one out to subscribers, and I just want to make sure that they're able to get this right before we talk about it here. So if you're a subscriber, all our plays are texted. All our plays are texted as well. And I'll just queue you up. Well, first I'm going to go ahead and just send it to you guys. We'll talk about this one momentarily. Okay, that one. I just hit publish. You could see if you're a subscriber when you're going to get the text message on it. Let's see here. Takes a second to go through. And I just got the text message. So you can see when you get the text message. But at any rate, first prop I want to get into. Gardner Minshew, longest completion, under 31.5. So go to your Gardner Minshew props on the Denver Denver Las Vegas game. I was right, Denver Las Vegas. Go to Gardner Minshew. We want his longest completion under 31.5. Let me look up that number right now. 31.5 is everywhere. It's easily 31.5. And in fact, I already gave this out to subscribers yesterday at a better number. So I still like it at 31.5. Let me read through some of the logic on why I like Gardner Minshew under 31.5 longest completion. This is obviously part of the longest reward segment, of course. Sorry, Matt didn't announce that, but I like to give out, if you're new to the show, I give out 2 player props that I think in the longest market, longest completion, longest reception, longest rush, over or under. In this case, I'm going Gardner Minshew, longest completion under 31.5. The Broncos pass defense has played the number 9 toughest schedule of passing offenses so far this season. They played the Bucks, who are number 6, the Seahawks, who are number 10, the Jets, number 15 with Aaron Rodgers, and then the Steelers, obviously a little bit below average, but still at number 21. In those games, Aaron Rodgers, Geno Smith, Baker Mayfield, Justin Fields, they've allowed 0 completions, have the Broncos defense, of over 30 yards. 0 against those passing attacks. Now you've got Gardner Minshew, who is going up against them. So none allowed against Aaron Rodgers, Geno, Baker, etc. Some good quarterbacks, some better quarterbacks, some guys that are at least having really good seasons. And now you've got Gardner Minshew without Davante Adams as number 1. In fact, they have allowed just 1 of 80 completions for more than 25 yards this year. That Denver Broncos defense is absolutely balling out right now. The only completion that they allowed this year that was over 25 yards was a wheel route to a running back for 30 yards. A wheel route to a running back. They obviously didn't get the covered right. That's the only one. Minshew has 2 completions all year that were longer than 31 yards. Both came inside of domes. This game's outdoors. And look at these man splits. Look at these man splits. Minshew versus, so the Denver Broncos, they blitz at one of the highest rates in the NFL. They run man coverage at one of the highest rates in the NFL. Look at these man splits. When Minshew goes up against zone, he's averaging 8.1 yards per attempt, 79% completions, and has a longest completion of 54 yards. Those are great numbers. He's having really good success against zone. Against man, Minshew is down to 4.3 yards per attempt, from 8.1 down to 4.3. 46% completions, from 79 down to 46%. And his longest completion is only 19 yards. So naturally, Denver's not going to be in man 100% of this game, but they play one of the highest rates in man, the most man that Gardner Minshew has faced this season, and he is much worse against man coverage. Now he has no Davante, under 31.5. Okay. There's a prop that I already gave out to subs. We're going to the next one. I'll cue you up on the game. This one is still, let me just double check, but I'm pretty sure it's widely available. I already kind of set it up, foreshadowed. That's what they call it. I foreshadowed this one a little bit. Go to the Carolina-Chicago game. Go to passing. We're going under longest completion for Andy Dalton. It's 34.5. Right now, the best number I see is -15 at Hard Rock, -15 at Bet365, -30 at DK, -30 at MGM, -29 at Caesars, -19 at Pinnacle. So those are but it's 34.5 everywhere. This actually, I work with some betting groups. We work together on releases. We share information. This one came across my desk this morning, so I didn't originate this one, but credit to my good friend if it wins, and money in your pocket as well. Kind of the crux of this one is the win. So as I'm talking about this game, I want to share some information on the win. I go to my favorite Wind app, and right now this game kicks off at 1 p.m. on Sunday. Yep, 1 p.m. on Sunday. 17 to 19 mile per hour winds sustained with gusts 26 to 29 miles per hour. We'll see if this forecast actually comes to fruition, but that is enough wind to cause problems, especially for downfield passing. That's a pretty substantial amount of wind. ESPN just went down to 33.5. Once we start to get around 15 miles per hour sustained with gusts over 20, then I start to be a little bit nervous here. And for a stadium that has a history of being problematic in the wind, in a city that gets a lot of wind, I think it's a little bit easier for me to feel comfortable if this forecast might be accurate. Andy Dalton obviously has only played 2 full games. He had 1 pass completion for over 21 yards against the Cincinnati Bengals pass defense, which is not a very good pass defense. He had 1 completion over 21 yards last week. That was a home game in beautiful conditions. He had 0 completions of over 35 yards versus the Las Vegas Raiders, but he did have 2 for exactly 35 yards. So he's gone over this number of 34.5 twice. Both came in the same game. That was a dome game versus the Raiders. Again, not a great pass defense. If you look at the Chicago Bears, this pass defense is substantially better than their run defense. I know you get the offensive line, which is actually like a very underrated aspect of the Carolina Panthers and specifically Andy Dalton's success. They're able to run the ball. I totally agree with Pam as it relates to Chuba Hubbard having a good day here potentially. They're going to be able to run the ball against the Chicago Bears defense. That's a strength for the Panthers against a weakness for the Bears. But though they are good at getting pass pro for Dalton, the strength of the Chicago Bears defense is that secondary, is the coverage, is the way that they play the cover 3 and they prevent big explosive plays down the field. Dalton doesn't really try to push the ball too far down the field. I don't know that he's going to have a lot of success in these conditions. So I forget the guy who asked about Deontay Johnson earlier, but his receiving yards rather. I prefer this prop here to that one, but I'm not going to say your prop isn't good either. I do think that they are going to struggle here to have a lot of success throwing the ball down the field. So I switched out one of the props that I was going to do. I will say this. There are a lot of props that I like this week that I have not yet released because the books aren't posting numbers on these quickly enough. They don't have as many of these up at this point in the week as usual. So if you're subscribing $5 for week 5, just go to sharp.football. You can get everything that we have. Regularly, it's like $90, $100, somewhere in that neighborhood for only $5. Great deal. For all you guys listening, just go over to sharp.football and you can get on board. Normally, I'll have a lot of 1 unit, 1.5 unit, or 1.25 unit props out there right now. Don't have as many of those yet. I've got them circled. I've done all the research. I'm just waiting for the lines to be posted. So let's see what's going on there with the numbers. But I do think that we're going to have several other props that I feel really strongly about. Okay. Let's see. It was me. Peter, you said, let's get a couple more questions and then we'll say goodbye. Peter, it was you. Yes. Jalen Johnson, elite corner, should cover. Deontay Johnson. We got B. More Dubby. Good luck stopping Henry and Lamar. Yeah, that's obviously true. Cincinnati has schemed up pretty well against these guys in the past, and I think that they should have some success in doing that again. We shall see. We shall see. Obviously, that's going to be a real strong divide, sharp versus square. It looks like Jonathan Taylor is out this week, so you're going to see that number go crazy on the board here. The Jaguars were laying 3 points. Official now. A lot of these injuries, the funny part about injuries, just to share this a little bit more with you guys, is we already sort of know that a player is going to miss or a player is unlikely to play. And then once it's announced and it hits the board on the odds screen and that little eye light pops up and turns on, then everybody freaks out once again. And it gets double factored into the line. Perfect example, Malik Neighbors. We knew yesterday Malik Neighbors is not playing in this game, right? He had his concussion not on a Sunday and he hadn't practiced on a Thursday. He had his concussion last Thursday, right? That's rare if you're gonna be playing in a game and it's a Thursday and you had a concussion the Thursday before and you're still not practicing. Very low chance that you're going to play. And in fact, I think what might have made it worse is if you remember the game, I don't think he was wearing a mouthpiece when he got slammed into the turf on the sideline. And so that could have made it a little bit worse for him. But all signs were pointing to him not playing. All of a sudden it gets announced that he's not playing today. And Seattle goes from 6.5 up to 7. The total drops down from 43.5, 44 down to 42.5. So if you just pay attention to some of these things beforehand, you're going to be able to get some better numbers. And then they get double factored in. These injuries get double factored in. And we are facing so many more injuries this season than we have in the past. So I don't love it. I think it's ridiculous. Well, it's not ridiculous. It's unfortunate that we're having so many injuries. It makes it more challenging to handicap everything and to trust in your model. So that leads right into your question, Brett. How much do you weigh modeling versus film study when making picks? Back when I was younger and I didn't focus on this as diligently, like for my entire career, like my whole job, when I was doing other things, back at that time, I focused more on just the model. Whatever the model says, that's what we're going to roll with. And life was good and it was successful. There's so many more betting groups out in the market now. It becomes more challenging. You have to incorporate more in. And naturally, it's very easy for me to run the model on a Sunday night, see what my numbers are. If I just played the model, then what am I doing the rest of the week? And I guess I could be living a relatively normal life, but why would I want that? So I then cram through the film, study the tape, look at the matchups, go through, pages and pages where I mark everything up and I look at all the different matchups and angles that are going on and match teams up and look at everything. And that takes the rest of the week, writing up things, doing my analysis. So the vast majority of it now, probably from a time perspective, is actually film study, is actually looking at the matchups. The model is very easy to run. I don't weigh the film study and all that more than the model. The model still is the vast majority of it, but it's definitely not 100% anymore. But there is a little bit more art to it than pure science, like it once was. Okay, travel, Jacob. We do factor. You do want to factor in travel. For example, horrible spot for the Seattle Seahawks. This is why, if Neighbors were up, this would have been a lot easier to want to back the New York Giants in this spot. You got Seattle going East Coast back all over the map. Now they got to turn around. They've got a Thursday game coming up on deck as well. All these things definitely play into how fresh and crisp they're going to be for this game. Obviously, they're played on a short week as well, playing in Detroit. So that's a tough travel spot for that team this week's game against the Giants. But now the Giants, of course, are without Malik Neighbors. And I don't know if they announced anything about Motor Singletary or not, if he's going to be up. But that's your number one running back and your number one wide receiver that a lot of the offense was flowing through. So that's obviously not ideal. Okay. Do you do the wave props on the site or are others involved in that as well? Well, if you talk about how we release props on the website, who comes up with the different props on the website, that's a little bit of a group effort. I'm the one with the final seal of approval on everything that goes out, and I probably originate the majority of it, but we get Rich involved, we get Ray involved, we get Curtis a little bit involved as well. There's a team of us that are submitting some ideas along the way that then we decide ultimately what are some of the strongest plays that we should be on. But yeah, it's a group effort, but I certainly am spearheading that. Now, at one point several years ago, I was not. Since I started taking over these prop bets over the last 2 years have been great for us. So I enjoy it. I love breaking these games down as well. Okay. I think that's it for this week's show, guys. I'll remind you one more time, 2 things. If you enjoy the show, we'll be back on Tuesday. We're going to have a special guest on Tuesday. We had Jordan Schultz last week. We got another special guest lined up for this upcoming Tuesday. Please go over to YouTube. If you're enjoying this chat, you're enjoying the discussion, the conversation, the information we're sharing, like, subscribe, set your alerts for us so that you can be reminded every time that we go live. That's the first one. The second one is go to the website if you want everything for $5 this week. Week 5 for $5 over at sharp.football. That's where you're going to get more information on that. So with that said, guys, great show on Friday. Hope you guys make some money this weekend. Follow Ryan, follow Pam, follow myself. And until Tuesday, good luck with all your bets.
Well,